consume it. And we are coming to want to have an academy, a bigger front for the purposes that she has enumerated. Very, very important. It's very, very important. Now, you were also mentioning something about another group called GAP2, and there was also one other called LUPAC. I don't know how many belongs to. You see, GAND does not necessarily relegate all these associations to the background, because those associations will be funded on a particular agenda or a particular objective. If those objectives do not clash, but they rather reinforce those of GAND, they can still go on that that tangent. But at the time, I thought there were some clashes here and there, and all sorts of things. I think I'm also a member among the LUPAC, not GAP2, but LUPAC platform. But thank God we are making headway. We are making headway towards unifying the front so that we can have a very strong force to deal with all the problems that we're talking about. One thing I want to re-establish is that, and I'm sure some of you will contend this. Of course, when she said it, some of you were contending. When I said that almost every problem that we have in Ghana, in fact, even in the whole world, can be traced down to nutrition, malnutrition, poor nutrition. If you see, just because people have reduced nutrition to consumption of food, consuming food, and then when most people will talk about diet is not the same as nutrition. So when they say diet, they're looking at the food that we eat and so on and so forth. So when you look at it, you restrict it to those things. That is why everybody else who knows something else apart from nutrition is also a nutritionist. Because we all eat. And for that reason, even people who know good food, they know how to taste food and they know all we call it the debris about eating food and so on. They call themselves, they bandit themselves about as nutritionists. And we, the ones who are supposed to be the nutritionists, are sitting at the back. So we need to assert ourselves and make sure that the agenda that we have, we push forward. Because that's how it started for the medics, for the pharmacists, for all of them, even the allied health science, when they started, when we were, at the UPS, try to establish the nutrition society, the nutrition department and so on and so forth. There was nothing like allied health science. There was nothing like that. You understand? But you see now they are there accepting themselves and even trying to, we are more or less under them. I want to get to a place where we can take ourselves out of that and also do our own thing, govern ourselves and make sure that we are doing what is right. Okay, having said that, the important thing as a trainer of nutritionists, I am very excited all the time. Anytime I'm called upon to come in, execute something in that line, some kind of aspect of building people's capacity. And I'm a very, I eat, drink, and sleep nutrition. I'm sure you will see, you know it already. If you can look at me, you know that I'm eating and sleeping and drinking nutrition. And breathing nutrition, do everything nutrition. That is a fact. And we should also be that. We should put ourselves in that thing, and I'm telling you, nutrition will go far. If you know the importance of nutrition, you will always be shouting it wherever you go. If you know the importance, because people say we are what we eat. It is not a small statement. It's not about consuming food anyway. That eat there is not consumption of food. It's about nutrition. That food we are what it goes beyond what you eat. It's actually about what, how, where, when, all the issues surrounding what you eat. And so that is what nutrition is about. So we need to see that. Yes, you can't find it. Okay. All right, so we are going to be looking at anemia and its control and prevention. Now, I am very sure that if you talk about anemia, even the illiterates in town know about anemia. They call it what? Shipoli. That means a reduced amount of what? Blood. But in the past, in the very early times when anemia became an issue, the Greeks recognized it and they gave it a name. That name, anemia, is derived from a Greek word. Still cannot get it.
No, it's done. It's done. I'm just trying to.
Okay, so let me start. When you get there, they will get it. It's from a Greek word which means without blood. Without blood. That's anemia. Or sometimes another word is used instead, which is bloodlessness. Bloodlessness. And what they realized was that people who became anemic were often people who had certain conditions, and their level, the blood levels in those people continue to deteriorate. They continue to decrease up to a point where the functionality of the blood became very, very depressed. They found it eventually, at long last.
Yes.
Okay, I think we'll get there very soon. Very there. I mean, there's a lot. Now, I'm not going to claim to be the best person when it comes to talking about anemia. So, as much as possible, we'll make it quite interactive, so that when it gets to a point, you will have the opportunity to, add something to it or ask questions and so forth, seek for clarification. Because anemia has been with us for a very long time. Now, even as we are seated in this hall, I can assure you that I can say that maybe about half of the people here have anemia. How many of you have anemia? Yes. How many? You are not raising your hand. Okay, that's how it is. That's how anemia is. In the healthy population, it's so hard for people to even know that they have anemia, because most of the time it doesn't show as there's no symptom. It is asymptomatic. You don't see the symptom, so you don't think you have. You may even feel the symptom, but you ascribe that symptom to something else, some other problem that you are facing, which invariably is underlined by the anemia. So we have it, even if it is mild, which is not something that shows signs and so on and so forth, it's still there. And the fact of the matter is that even mild anemia has severe consequences in the long term. So it is not something to joke with. Usually we always want to deal with the severe cases, issues of severity. That's what we do. We don't look at the mild and the moderate situation. And that is not just for anemia. It is for most of the other issues. And one of them, I don't know how many of you have heard me talk about this, is malnutrition. People always look at the severe issues of malnutrition and relegate the moderate and the mild ones to the background. But let me tell you this. If you are dealing with severe cases, you are dealing with them, you are able to solve severe cases, and you are not looking at the mild and the moderate, which happens to be the larger case. What are you doing in the long run? It means you're only doing something that will spare more people from that bracket into the severe case. Is that not it? You are only grabbing the tip of the iceberg. The tip of the iceberg is what you are trying to wrap up. And the whole iceberg is below there. And as time goes on, you see it coming up. You see it coming up, more of it is coming up. So why don't you, at the time that you are dealing with the severe cases, also looking at how to deal with the underlying cases, the ones that are lying below, so that even if it's going to come up, very little will be coming up, and such a time that everything will get resolved. And that is how we have been doing things, always looking at severe. When we talk about malnutrition, and which encompasses a whole lot of things, the best thing that comes to people's mind is the severe issues. We look at children who are stunted, who are wasted, who are underweight and so on. But we don't see the other situation where there is a majority of them, under moderate and mild condition. So we need to focus on that. Anemia is the thing. It still hasn't come. Hey. Wow. Oh, you're using a different version of PowerPoint. You've seen it?
I've seen it.
It's all right. Don't worry. I'm used to teaching without lecture notes or PowerPoint. I am very good at that. So don't worry, you will still learn something. I hope you are just listening and paying attention. Yes. I know the anemic ones will suffer. Because the science of anemia, science and symptoms of anemia is said that some of you lose your attention span very soon. After you become fatigued, you lose your attention span, you become irritable and all that. Because the science of anemia, and we have it. I can assure you that if you were to measure your levels of anemia or levels of your blood, so to speak, in quotes, you will notice that about half of us here are anemic. And we may be at the borderline or maybe just mild. And so on and so forth. But let me reiterate this point. Even if you are mild anemia, it's in the long term, it has severe consequences. I want to say this because we are nutritionists. Sometimes you don't see these things very well. Mild anemia in the long term has severe consequences. If you know what anemia is all about, and I'm sure by the time we finish, you will understand why it will have severe consequences. But we are talking about blood. We're talking about blood. And this is a blood disorder, a disorder of the blood. If you look at blood, and some of you all know what blood is, zinc is actually a tissue, a fluid tissue. In other words, it is part of your body, but it's fluid in nature, and it's found within the vessels and the heart. So the powerhouse of the vessels and the heart that carries all the materials, including, and more importantly, in our case, oxygen. We are looking at oxygen because it is what provides the energy. Oxygen provides the energy, apart from other things. It does so many other things, but it provides the energy for every metabolic function in your body. So if the oxygen is not there to yield that energy, then what are you talking about? You are as good as dead. There's no energy. So we need the blood to function normally, and the blood is composed, like I said, it's a tissue. In fact, it's a fluid tissue. It's a fluid tissue made up of fluid matrix, which is called plasma, in which you find what we call the formed elements. The formed elements are sometimes we call them the cells, but they are not all cells. So that's why we use the term formed elements. We have the predominant cell-like or cells called the red blood cells. They are predominant because they are the largest quantity. Then the white blood cells. Then we have the platelets, which are also called, there are other names for these cells. I don't want to go into that. You can find out. Maybe along the line, you see them.
So it's coming.
It's coming now.
Hooray. Want to apologize for those technical
issues. Don't worry, I think we are just getting on.
We have online participants as well, so
I'm sure they are listening. Are they?
Yes, they are listening. So
yeah.
So sorry about that technical hitches. Yeah, so we are now on the slides are on the screen, and Prof would continue. Thank you. I'm afraid to put it on share mode before it disappears again. Screen share, right? Slideshow. Prof, are you okay?
I'm not very okay, but you are not. Are you sharing? Are you?
Yeah, I'm sharing this.
No, this is not in.
It's not a PowerPoint. Yeah.
I don't know. Is it now? Still not in power. Are you born before computer?
I'm on both. I guess it's the machine. So we are trying to make a swap of machines. So that's
okay. Whilst we are doing it, let me continue. If there's any issue or anything to clarify, you can always come back and let me clarify.
It's worked. It's come on. Yeah, he uses a thumb.
No. It's okay. I will manage.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So. No, it's okay. So, the face. I think I've said a lot of the things here. Okay. Now, I think, as you can see, I've tried to make it very clear, very bold, and quite big because I have side problems, and I'm sure some of you may have side problems. It's not due to anemia anyway. It has implications for anemia. All right. Now, something that is part of what I wanted to say anyway. So let me just say, like I said, it's an old condition. It has been known for a very long time, and the Greeks named it. That's why we call it anemia. But the characteristics of anemia is something we have known for a very long time. It is characterized by a reduction in the, what do you call it? The number of circulating. Now, I want to use, erythrocytes or red blood cells, RBCs. Sometimes they are the same things, but it's better to stick to one. So I'll stick to RBC, red blood RBC, so that we understand. Erythrocyte is the name. For the white blood cells, they are also called leukocytes, and the platelets are called thrombocytes. So if you see them anywhere, that is exactly what we're talking about. We don't want to be very technical here. What is important is that anemia is anemia. If you go to the moon, it is still anemia. It's a reduction, characterized by reduction of these red blood cells. Now, I was just telling you about the blood constituting various cells or form element and the fluid, which is the plasma. And they are all in the plasma, quite spaced in the plasma. Now, the red blood cells are the majority. They form the predominant cells. And the reason is that they are the ones that carry the oxygen. And oxygen is a major requirement in every tissue of the body. Every cell of the body requires oxygen for a particular reason, to provide energy. I've said that. Now, the oxygen is actually carried in by a pigment called hemoglobin, which is found in the red blood cells. These cells are biconcave disc. They are, disc shaped, and they have by two concavities on each side, either side. And the reason why they are that is that it provides a very large surface area, so that oxygen can bind, or can, it will carry a lot of oxygen on its surface or within its body. That's why so that it carries a lot. And that is for a very important reason. And it's very flexible. The red blood cell is flexible. And the reason why it's flexible is that it passes through vessels that have diameters which are smaller than its own diameter. So when it's going to pass through a smaller lumen, smaller diameter vessel, it has to bend. It has to bend itself or become flexible, like in the capillaries. So the flexibility is an important part of the characteristics of this thing. And the numbers are also very important, very critical. You need the numbers. So anytime there's a reduction in the numbers, then you are getting towards what we call anemia. In other words, the blood is, you are becoming you are losing blood, so to speak. Not physical, but you are losing the quantum that is needed to provide the energy that your body requires. Then there's something also about the blood, which is very, very important. It says when you lose the amount of red blood cells, the content of hemoglobin also declines or decreases. And so a decline in hemoglobin levels, which is what usually is reported in some of our hospitals or in the measurements or the laboratory tests that we do, also signifies anemia, because there's a level that you have to have up to. We'll be looking at that very soon. Then, because the hemoglobin carries the oxygen, we also say that the oxygen carrying capacity would have declined. And there's a way of measuring the oxygen carrying capacity of the hemoglobin. And so there are a whole lot of things. Now, the hemoglobin carries the oxygen, and the oxygen binds to a substance or part of the hemoglobin that contains an element or a metal, or I say a mineral called iron. Iron in its reduced form. So iron is found in the hemoglobin, which is also found in the red blood cells. And any alterations in any of these will characterize what anemia is. So sometimes when you are measuring anemia, you tend to measure the red blood cells, but other cases we measure the hemoglobin, and then in some other cases we measure the iron. So you can use all those metrics to determine anemia. And so let's have that in mind. Can you give me the next slide? Now the WHO has, after all the, the important, research that was done, that has been done all over the world, the WHO has come to recognize that anemia is something that is very widespread, and therefore there was the need to standardize the measurement of anemia, and they use HB. HB is what is used, and the HB of individuals is also dependent on so many other factors, which are covariates, so that they tend to alter depending on those factors like gender, or should I say sex. Being male or female will give you, a certain level of HB that you should have. Okay. In fact, whether you are above sea level or below sea level is also another important factor to consider. Then we also have age. Your age. As you grow older, certain things change in your body and also changes your what do you call it? And then, okay, I've talked about altitude. Apart from sea level, altitude, that is, as you go higher, it also affects, your HB and so on. So with respect to the HB that we know, which is in the table, as you can see, the table has determined HB for various groups, cell groups, or groups of individuals. These characteristics are very important to think about when you are considering these ages. And therefore, we have ranges. Usually we have a range. These are like kind of like averages. And so within the range, if you fall within the range, then you know that you are normal. You are within the range. You are in a normal range. Anything below that range makes you anemic. And there are also other ranges for mild, moderate, and severe, which I haven't captured here. But it's all dependent on what metrics have been used. And they are variously dependent. They're dependent on where the anemia is being determined. So anemia in Ghana, if you have anemia in Ghana, it may slightly differ when you go to another country because of the metrics that may be used. And all these other characteristics I'm talking about may be used as part of the criteria to determine anemia. But however, in most circumstances, when you have anemia, you always have anemia. You use one particular metric and you have the anemia. Now, when you look at the red blood cells, one thing that I didn't mention is that the red blood cells, when you, in the laboratory, when they take your blood and they put it in a centrifuge, the small capillary tubes, or they put it in a tube, and they allow it to settle. The blood will settle to separate into cellular component and the plasma. The cellular component has two parts, main parts. The red blood cells themselves, which is the larger portion, and then the white blood cells and the platelets, which forms a coat on top of the red blood cells. And the red blood cell component is called the hematocrit, or the packed cell volume. So sometimes instead of measuring your HB or whatever, the count and red blood cell count and so on, they can also use the packed cell volume or the hematocrit to determine whether you have anemia or not. And all these are kind of used just in the laboratory to measure your level of anemia so that you can deal with it. All right. Okay. Next, still a lot of a lot of thinking in our heads that what really is anemia then? Is it a disease or what? And also a lot of us think that it's a disease. Is that not it? Yes, it may not necessarily be a disease because of the way it comes about or the way it is caused. Because of the way it comes about, it may not necessarily be a disease. Because most of the time it underlies many diseases. It is a marker. It could mark the disease itself, or it could mark the prognosis of the disease. That means whether the disease is getting worse. And sometimes it's even used as a predictor to predict at what level of the condition you are having and what is going to happen next to you. And so, because it's something that shows a certain level of deterioration or a certain level of what you call difficulty when you have that particular condition. And to be honest with you, a lot of the time we are not very conversant with how to determine or to measure anemia. And so we just use one or two metrics and we pin down anemia to one or two kinds of or types of anemia. And in our whole this thing, when we measure, because we are measuring hemoglobin and sometimes hematocrit and so on, we think that anemia is restricted to that level. But there are so many other ways. But when you look at the metrics, you will understand that anemia can be measured in several ways. And depending on the measure, you can even extrapolate to know what probably could have been the cause. I'm sure you heard of pneumochromic, microcytic, macrocytic, and so on and so forth. All those are terms or tendencies to show what may be the underlying cause of the anemia. But what I want to say here is that even when you measure anemia, you should know that invariably that anemia is being caused by some other condition. The anemia is underlying another condition. Very often, you don't just have anemia and you are just sitting there, you have anemia, and you don't know what is causing it. There is something underlying the cause of anemia because the causation of anemia is so, in fact, it's so complex. It's very complex. And we say it is multifactorial. There are so many factors. So what we see as one form of anemia may not necessarily be that form of anemia, because what you are seeing is either, something that is working synergistically to cause the anemia. Some conditions are coming together, they are adding up, or they are multiplying together, and so on and so forth. So if, for instance, you have a disease condition called, let me use HIV. It's very easy to use HIV because we all know what HIV is. Now, HIV, when you have HIV, and this is a fact, but I work in anemia in HIV, so I'm telling you this as a fact. The anemia in HIV is caused by direct and indirect means. So many things come together to give you anemia in HIV. The same thing with even malaria. Anemia caused by malaria. Anemia caused by, in fact, you can name whatever, tuberculosis, any infection, even the worms that we have. Sometimes you say it's the worms that the person has, which is drinking the blood. But there are so many other things surrounding the presence of the worm in the GIT, which is the sucking of blood by the worms. It could be other things. The presence of the worm is invoking other conditions that is also exacerbating in the anemia that is present. One particular thing, I will tag anemia by that. So it brings me to something that even though very often anemia is recognized as a medical or clinical problem, much of its its occurrence is associated with poor nutrition. It's malnutrition. You see what I'm talking about? Much of the anemia that we know about has malnutrition as the major associated factor, and we'll see it clearly in our slides. The next one is also still on what is anemia. Okay, in fact, these are profound statements, so sometimes I tend to read them, then I can explain. It says, anemia represents an imbalance in the rate of production and degradation or destruction of red blood cells and or blood loss. So there are three things here. Production, rate of production is affected. The degradation of the or destruction of the cell is also part of it, and then a loss of the cell. These are three major things. They are actually underlying the mechanism by which anemia occurs. But you see, all these three things may be present in almost every anemia that you have, but you may not notice it, you may not see it. It may be present. At the time, you may see one particular thing because that is what you are measuring. But if you look at it critically, you see underlying the anemia, all these production problem, the powerhouse of the red blood cells, which I haven't told you about, but I know you know, where the red blood cells are produced. In fact, all the cells, all the formed elements or the cells of the blood are produced in certain specific areas of the body. We call the myeloid tissue. Okay, the myeloid tissue. And I don't want, like I said, I don't like using, but we call the bone marrow. You heard of bone marrow? Yes, bone marrow is where these red blood cells are produced. Some white blood cells and the platelets and so on all come from that same area. Then some of them get into some other areas, lymphoid tissue, which will produce your B lymphocytes and the T lymphocytes and so on and so forth. We're not into that. We concentrate mainly on the red blood cells. But you see, because they are coming from somewhere and they are also under a certain stimulus, red blood cells are produced under a stimulus, and they are produced by the presence of some particular substance which provides the stimulus. And this substance is also referred to as a what do you call it? A hormone. It's a hormone. You know hormones and how they act in your body, but there's a particular hormone for red blood cell synthesis or production, which is called erythropoietin. It's actually a growth factor, specific growth factor for red blood cell production. It's called erythropoietin. And this erythropoietin, the story about erythropoietin is that it is produced in the kidneys, and part of it is also from the liver. So the liver will synthesize the protein. It's a protein. The liver will synthesize it, and then it is activated in the kidneys. So you see what is happening. If you have a liver problem, you have a kidney problem, and erythropoietin is not produced, then you are not likely to have adequate levels, or you are not even going to produce any reasonable amounts of what? Red blood cells. So liver disease, underlying kidney problem, all will lead to what? Anemia. But you see the anemia, you may not even see the liver or the kidney problem. They may be mild. So the anemia will be showing, and you think it's just anemia. And we always run and ascribe it to something because we'll get there. You understand what I'm saying? But I just want to reiterate this point so you know that the causes of anemia are so many, and in any particular time, there are a number of them that we need to put together so that we can. You've moved. Okay. Now, these are the symptoms of anemia. In fact, sometimes we use, signs and symptoms. Let me add the signs and symptoms. Some of them may not be symptoms, they just be signs. You just look and you see. Okay. So there are signs and symptoms of anemia, and there are a number of them. There are even some that are not here. If I want to mention them, some of you can identify some of them in yourselves. That's why I say we're anemic. You remember? Look at it. Fatigue. Some of you are tired already. Aren't you tired? I'm tired, as the Nigerians will say, I'm tired. Okay. And so in mild and severe forms, you can just experience tiredness. Some of you, when you climb 2 steps, 1 step, 2, 3, 4, and you get there, and then you are panting like, you are tired. That is anemia. That is a symptom. You have an underlying anemia there, and you don't know. Difficulty in breathing, you have breathing difficulties. Then you are also having, sometimes described as short of breath. Difficulty in breathing is when you are breathing, you continuously breathing, and you are finding it hard to breathe. Okay, but you see, when you are short of breath, means you get to a point where you can't even breathe anymore. And some of you get to that stage where you are often short of breath, and that's one of the things. Rapid heart rate or palpitation. Your heart rate is increasing. Heart rate should be about our average of 70 beats per minute. If you are going beyond 70 beats per minute, means, and usually you get to 80, 90 something, and so on and so forth, 100 and so on, then you are, normal. When you have not done anything, you are just sitting there, or just do a few steps here and there, and then your heart is racing very fast. Then you should try to think about palpitation. Anemia. Then the skin's paleness, the pallor of the skin, and then the pallor of the sclerae. If you look at the eye, the eyelids, look at the tongue, look at the mucosal layers in your mouth, and so many other places, and so on. You see usually pink. When the pink nature is low, it's down, you are seeing, that means you have somewhat. You have anemia. Then what do you call it? The coldness, cold extremities. Usually your extremities, your hands, your feet, and some other are cold. Not because you are in a cold, environment, but they just feel cold. It means the blood that you had is not enough. It has been shunted into, or it has been moved from the extremities into the cells of the body, into the tissues of the body, so that you can provide what the body needs. Then we have confusion or loss of concentration. That is something that happens a lot. People, you talk to them, or you are just having a conversation and they look confused. And you can see this in a large, in a large extent in elderly people, when they are older. And elderly people are very prone to anemia. And you see that as we go along, they are very prone to anemia. Not just elderly people, people who are convalescent, when you are sick and you are coming out of hospital and so on and so forth. And there are even normal people who are normal, and they get confused easily and all that. Some of them are usually because of this particular reason. It's not because they have a particular a problem with the mental faculty, but they are just anemic, and that is what is giving them all this. Dizziness and fainting. Dizziness and fainting. You can have all kinds of dizziness and fainting. Simply means the blood that is supposed to return to your, to your heart is not enough. Okay? So there's less blood in your system. So what is happening is that what is going into, the brains are reduced. And the brain is where you have your alertness and everything.
So how come that?
So if there's less blood, the amount of oxygen going there is low, you become easily dizzy. It has an effect on your alertness, and you become dizzy. Sadness and depression. So often you see people are sad and depressed, and the main cause of this is what? Anemia. Anemia can make you sad. Anemia can make you depressed. And you see, some people cannot, not depression, but the way your emotions are expressed, the way
so the key is
so there's no problem again.
no.
So I'm gonna move the battery.
Not yet. Why? Now maybe say tomorrow because he is that's why I wanted to see.
Not all the same. Remember, there are so many others that.
So now try that. It's possible maybe the battery wasn't the reason why the.
They talk of it, but let me mention it.
Okay.
You know, But there's pregnant women like Paracasa or whatever they call it picas or it's a sign of anemia. Pica is a sign of anemia, specifically iron deficiency. And a lot that don't do anything.
But can this thing be on
We
it
don't do
until
anything.
Can this thing until be the day until tomorrow?
If you are a nutrition person, you are wherever you
Is that so that you get them by get a battle? Then maybe what we do is that
it's not a,
tomorrow,
just leave that person.
then I'll remove
Your nail, fingernail, yeah, the fingernail that has curved like this. The finger, not the finger, but the nail that has curved.
Because this one, they have no, it can stop.
Curved is also a sign of what? Anemia. And there's, in fact, there are a lot of sometimes they, and all the type of hair on your
This
skin.
guy,
When you-
then mute your mic.
all that.
You are not penalized.
Other skin,
If you penalize and
that is sign anemia. Let me also say that mild, moderate, or
They are saying it's don't take my time. I don't know whether I don't want to. There's another one on
and moderate anemia still have consequences.
whether that one today need to.
Can we go to the next slide?
But this one is one day. You come back on Friday.
So far,
They
from
say
what
it's
I'm
just like half a day.
you can or some of the
Then
things that
tomorrow going to- we need-
anemia. But we
No,
it will not be-
it will not be other one, maybe like this time or before this.
are not
But this will
independent.
come in there because of the vaccine. But we know this. For me, I just told my wife that
Synergy
this week I'm not going to serve Mondays. Then
action.
so I was just there
Sometimes they even
Monday that he said, wait, let's come. Then Thursday. We'll
if
get
you
it.
have HIV, for instance, HIV directly affects the red blood cells, and then HIV, because of its nature, its chronic nature, and the inflammation that it creates, and so on and so forth, also affects the formation of hemoglobin and so on and so forth. Also leads to the destruction of the red blood. So HIV alone can have several ways of bringing about anemia, and so the anemia there is going to be very, very quite high. The more viruses you have, the same with all the others. Malaria, the same. If you have high parasitemia, you are most likely to have a high level of anemia. Not just because the parasites will lyse the red blood cells, but they create the environment where the red blood cells are, destroyed in a hasty fashion, whether inside or outside the blood vessel. So this is something that we should have in mind, so that when we are treating people for these conditions, we know what exactly we want to do. Now we'll come to them, but these are all issues. For the paramount causation, the one that is of paramount interest, has always been the nutritional anemia. Now, and I want to say here, as nutritionists, when we are asked about anemia, we say, oh, half of the anemias are nutritional. Now, I'm telling you today that you cannot say categorically that half of them are nutritional, because the nutritional ones that you may identify are underpinned by other types of, other causes. So you can't say for sure that it's anemia. Now, for me, what I've been reading, I know that it's not the anemia that we have. Nutrition only exacerbates what we already have. Nutrition tends to worsen the anemia we have, because we are in an environment where the conditions are very conducive for infectious agents. You are sitting here right now. You don't know how important the agents or the infectious is. I find it very conducive here to try. The bacteria, the viruses, they are in the atmosphere right now. They are in your body. They are on your skin. They are inside your GIT. So you create the environment which makes them always want to thrive. And their thriving always challenges your immune system. And any challenge to your immune system will release what we call cytokines, inflammatory cytokines. These cytokines will create the inflammation which is necessary to help the immune system to fight these agents. Now, the inflammatory system alone is a cause of anemia. inflammation alone can cause anemia. So if you are sitting there, there's no infection, you think there's no infection, but you have some anemia. You have some inflammation, whether mild, moderate, or severe inflammation, or chronic or acute, you are likely to have underlinings of what? Anemia. So small flu, you are coughing, and all that sort of thing is all creating inflammation in your system. You have a little sore, some bruises here and there, and so on and so forth. So many things, they will lead to some precipitate anemia, and then your lack of good nutrition, poor nutrition in your system will just compound the anemia. At the long run, you may think that is the poor nutrition which is creating the basis for the anemia, but it is underlined by some other infectious agents. And they are not one, they are more. Apart from that, you know how common it is in our parts of the world to have this what we call heritable disorders. Heritable or what we call hemoglobinopathies. Okay, very, very common. Sickle cell, either you have the sickle cell anemia or you have the trait. We have glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency. We have thalassemia, beta and alpha, and all those other thalassemias. And they are there. They are very common in our parts of the world. If you have these conditions already, anemia is right in your system. Then you have other infections coming to add. Then you have nutritional deficiency coming to add. So you can imagine the anemia that we all have. And most of us have one or two of these conditions. You may look healthy right now, but if you go into it and you want to do the assessment, you will notice that there's one form or the other of something that is causing the anemia. So the anemia we see here is a conglomerate of so many things, issues. That is why it's not easy to just use one, one strong approach, and then bam, you have gotten rid of the anemia. It doesn't go that way. We say anemia is intractable, which means that it is not relenting at all. We are doing all we can here in our parts of the world, but it's not relenting. Why? Because we are tackling it with one prong approach. If it's iron tablet, iron this, and we are giving iron. Is that not it? We know what I'm talking about. We give it to pregnant women. We give it to girls. Everybody, iron. We are giving. But the thing may not be iron. And we come to understand it. It may not necessarily be iron, dietary iron. It may not be iron that you need to add in your diet as a supplement or whatever. It may be iron, yes, but iron deficiency can be caused by some other reasons, not just dietary. And that is what we are gradually etching to. So we need to understand the real picture of anemia so that we don't just use a one-pronged approach and then we don't get it right. And that is one of the reasons why anemia is still unrelenting. We still have it. And I'm saying this for reiterating this point. I'm very, very sure about this. If you measured anemia in this room, I'm telling you, if you measured it, if you like, you can dare me and bring your hemoglobin, and we measure the levels of HB, just HB in this room, and you'll be surprised that about 50% will have a low HB. About 50% of us in this room, or even more. If it was only ladies, then you can expect it to be more. And you know why ladies have more low HB. You know why. These are all part of the reasons. So we are looking at them gradually, but it's very important. Now, inflammation, poor diet and micronutrient deficiencies. The diet and micronutrient. In fact, basically the diet, when we talk about the diet, poor diet, we're talking of diets that are usually low in energy. And let me say it here again, once and for all, for you to hear. Low energy intakes is a cause of anemia. So if you are not meeting your energy requirements, you are most likely to, because all the processes in producing red blood cells requires energy. Energy. And the energy is not used just for red blood, it's also used for other processes, other things in your body. So if you don't have enough energy, you are most liable to what? Anemia. Then the micronutrients, they are part of the supplies for producing red blood cells. They're part of the supplies. Iron, we always mention iron, is the predominant requirement because iron is found in the center of the hemoglobin, okay? But apart from that, all the other nutrients that are required to put these iron together, to put the hemoglobin together, and so on and so forth, to make sure that the hemoglobin is functionally properly situated. And micronutrients. We have the B vitamins, and I said B vitamins here because there are a lot of them. Vitamin B1, B2, B3, B6, B9, B12. All of them. All of them. And those B12, that's folic acid. Folic acid is B9. So these two. That is because and also B1, B1 deficiency that can lead to anemia. You know B1. B1 is what? What is B1? Thiamine. B1. B3 is what? Niacin or nicotinic acid. B2 is what? Riboflavin. In fact, riboflavin deficiency is a huge cause of anemia. Riboflavin, and most of the riboflavin is gotten in milk. So if you are not a milk consumer, you are most likely to be deficient in riboflavin. And that can lead to anemia. Okay, as for the others, you know where to get them. B6 is pyridoxine. It's also a very important enzyme, nutrient for the production of red blood cells, pyridoxine. Then as for folic acid and B12, you know what they are. They are good for maturation, for DNA synthesis and so on, RNA and blah, blah, blah. And when you have, these cells are being formed, they need all these molecules. And without those molecules, you don't have a well-formed red blood cell. You don't have hemoglobin properly formed, and then you have the defects, which we call anemia. So all these nutrients, including zinc, zinc, including copper, I have not added all the copper, zinc, very, very important for RBC synthesis. Vitamin A, some of you may not be aware. You have heard of vitamin A for other things, but not for anemia. It's very, very critical for, for red blood cell formation. So if you have lack of vitamin A, you are likely you can get some anemia. Vitamin C, as for vitamin C, I think at a point I am so much on vitamin C that people were calling me vitamin C doctor. And that is a fact. You see, vitamin C is something that we underrate so much in our setting. We tend to think that, oh, it's easy to get vitamin C, but I can also be sure that even as we sit in this room, about 90% of us here are vitamin C deficient. 90%, because it is something you require every day. It is not something you take and you stop. Every day you must have meet your requirement. And how many of us take vitamin C products to meet that requirement? We don't take it. Sometimes I just say oranges, but we don't eat oranges. You may be eating tomatoes and some vegetables that may contain vitamin C, but imagine that you put the vitamin C on fire and you heat and boil and, come on, you lose all the vitamin C. So it's important that we recognize this. It's very, very critical. Then vitamin E, that is the part that people always neglect. Vitamin E is critical for the integrity, maintaining the integrity of the red blood cells. The cellular integrity, the membrane integrity, vitamin C helps because it's lipid. And vitamin E is for stabilizing the lipid membrane of the red blood cells. Without vitamin E, the membranes are very fragile, very liable to destruction. So you see your red blood cells, which have a lifespan of 120 days, having a lifespan of 60 days. And when it has a lifespan of 60 days, what it means that it has to be cleared as quickly as possible and more of it to go. So anemia. Vitamin E deficiency leads to what? Anemia. You may not know this, but that is it. And so we need to know how do you get vitamin E in your system? And those are very important things to consider when we are looking at how to prevent or how to control it. Come to that. Infections and infestations and chronic inflammation due to viral, bacterial, protozoal, and even fungal infection, fungal organisms. And these are all things that cause inflammation in our system. And remember, they are rife. I've just mentioned earlier that they are in your body. You have bacteria in your body. You have fungus somewhere in your body. I don't want to mention names, but you know where the funguses are. Candida and all those things, they are there. As for bacteria, we know it. Then what? Protozoa. If you go beyond, you get protozoa in your system, your GIT and whatnot. And sometimes we have what do you call it? The infestations. Worm. She's helmintic infestations. Now, all these will cause chronic, if they are there for a while, they will cause what we call chronic inflammation. And the fact of the matter is that inflammation is a result of a lowering or results in the lowering of iron in your system. When you have inflammation, the iron levels in your blood iron will lower, will come down, will reduce, because most of the inflammatory processes will shift iron from your system into the macrophages and the reticular endothelium, some other parts of the body to shift. We call it sequestration. It will sequester, it will move it away. And why does it move it away? Because the microorganisms in your system also thrive on iron. Not just in your system, outside, wherever you find them, they need iron. But in your system, they get more of it. Imagine the parasites going into your red blood cells. You think they like red blood cells for something? It's because of the iron in the hemoglobin. They go for the iron, the hemoglobin, because they need it to thrive, to survive, to be able to proliferate. So when they are in your body, they are looking for iron. So any process that will release iron to these microorganisms, make them proliferate. So the condition is right. Your body creates an environment where it locks up this iron, and the iron is locked up and you become iron deficient. So iron deficiency is very common, not because you are not having iron in your diet. Most of the time, the iron deficiency we notice or we see is due to this inflammatory process, not iron deficiency or dietary iron deficiency. Because the dietary iron in itself is regulated, strictly regulated, because of these functions I've just told you about. Dietary iron is regulated. The amount of iron that is absorbed is so much regulated that if there is infection or there is chronic inflammation, very little will be absorbed or none, so that it will not be made available to these microorganisms. So your body has the function to regulate these things so that you don't get into serious serious infections and so on and so forth, things that will eventually may rather get you decimated. So that is one of the things we need to be thinking about. Iron deficiency is not necessarily due to dietary iron deficiency or dietary iron intake, but most of the time it is due to inflammation, chronic inflammation. And more, like I said, the conditions are ripe for inflammation in our system. As we sit, we are swallowing, we are breathing in all these germs and all these microbes and fungus and all of them, the spores are in the system and they are going to our body and so on. So we need to be sure of that. Then the bone marrow itself can be damaged. A damage to the bone marrow. The bone marrow is the powerhouse where the production unit is. And a lot of things can damage. Notably among them is your exposure to radiation. Now, as we are sitting in this room, I don't know how many of you know whether there's radiation somewhere in the room. Nobody knows. When you go to hospital, whether you are exposed to radiation or not, you don't even know. When you go for X-ray, as for the X-ray, everybody knows that X-rays emit radiation when you are there. So you see everybody running to hide. And then you, the one who is going for the X-ray, they say, ready? Breathe in, and then boom, they dose you with radiation. That is when you know that you are undergoing radiation. But radiations are all over the place. Some of them are radioactive. You don't see. The first time I had to measure my radiation levels was when I was in UK doing some course. I was doing some course on radioimmunoassay. That is when I realized that you don't have to be under this high dose or whatnot before you know that you're under. Any laboratory you enter there, there's radiation all over the place. They're using that. So there's a counter called the Geiger counter. You hold it and you on it, and you hear once you get closer to the radiation source, you hear it going faster and faster. And it tells you that there's radiation in some of the things we receive from the ports and from other places, from outside and so on, chemicals and whatnot. Some of them have radiation in them, coming out of them. We are exposed to all these things, and radiation will suppress your bone marrow. So your bone marrows are suppressed. You don't know. You are just walking about. Bone marrow is not able to. You are providing everything that you need to provide, but the amount of red blood cells produced is not coming. Well, why you see me time? Okay. So yeah, you're right. Okay, I'll try. Now, medications, ARVs, cancer treatment, medicines, and whatnot. They are all sources of anemia. Specific causes of anemia, because they will suppress the bone marrow. They also have an effect on, altering the bone marrow's function. Then we have genetic. That's one I've mentioned earlier. Genetic and hereditary. What do you call it? Yeah, we have them. GCPD, thalassemia, sickle cell anemia, and some others. And I think GCPD, a lot of us here don't know our GCPD status. Okay, when you are pregnant, you go on the baby. Okay, so most of the women who are giving birth. But as for the men, we don't care whether it's GCPD, whatever it is. And there are levels, there are different, Yes, yeah.
I don't know things that.
I don't know that it has an effect.
No, like sometimes it's like if you are food effect.
Yeah.
You are not supposed to be careful with your consumption of vitamin C. Vitamin C, when you have good effect and you take it causes some kind of.
Okay, we'll talk about that. Let me get there. Otherwise, we'll start. No, we'll talk about it. Don't worry. You see, sometimes there are certain things that are subtle and they are deceptive. They will deceive you, and if you're not careful, it's like the truth, the whole truth doesn't come out, and that's why we need to. These are very important things that we need to discuss so that you understand. The whole truth should come out. Otherwise, so when you are there, you not take vitamin C, and you need vitamin C. It's very, very important. So when they tell you this, and they are not telling you, so how do you do? What do you do? And then you are going without vitamin C. It's going to cause even further worse problems. So we need to be very cautious about that. All right. So now, yes, these are mechanisms we're talking about. The mechanisms for I alluded to them already, but just to give you a bit of background to some of them. Lower than necessary RBC production. That means we are talking about a production house. Lower than necessary will be due to the manufacturing house already having a problem, as I mentioned earlier. It could also be due to supply deficits. You say?
Mary. Let's go now. Our time is we are a bit behind time.
Okay, all right, okay. Okay, then higher than usual rates of RBC distraction. We're talking about hemolysis, which could be either in the blood itself or outside in the blood vessel or outside the blood vessel. And they could break up because of what is, penetrating the membrane, or what conditions are extrinsic to the cell itself or intrinsic to the cell contained within. If, for instance, you have bacteria or malaria inside your red blood cells, it will help, to easily lyse the red blood cells. Then there are substances that will interfere with the membrane itself. Okay, they interfere with the membrane. The other place antibodies, they create antibodies on the membrane, which will lead to the distraction by phagocytes. They create that sort of readiness for the phagocytes to engulf. And then there are some of them which will interfere with the membrane structure. Okay, vitamin E, for instance, deficiency can lead to something on the integrity, lowering the integrity of the membrane and easily leading to lysis. And so many other conditions are there. Infections in general, apart from the chronic nature of the infections, they create situations where these substances that are released can cause membrane distraction, or they create. Then there's one more. Let me just quick. All right, so we are looking at the blood loss or bleeding. this is a very important hemorrhage. I'm sure you are aware because you are losing blood. But sometimes when you lose it, it could be something that is lost internally. You don't see the blood. Okay, we don't see blood. We don't see it. It's overt. So you are losing it within the GIC or within certain cells, certain organs and so on. You don't see it, but you are losing blood. There are conditions like that. Then sometimes you lose it, but you don't actually notice it because it's a gradual loss, as in menstruation. You are losing it gradually over a period of time. You are not replenishing it, certain aspects of it. So you eventually become anemic. That's why I said earlier that women, if you look at the women alone, they have a higher. That's why in fact, the demands on it is higher than men because they are losing, especially menopausal. Premenopausal women. I mean, these are a list of methods which are usually laboratory or biochemically based. We assess anemia. So we can assess all these, use all these methods to gauge the type of anemia or the kind of anemia or the causation of anemia, the causality of anemia, which helps in resolving the anemia. If you don't measure, and often we just go and measure HB. So HB may not be able to tell, but sometimes when you even measure HB, you may know whether it's normochromic, hypochromic, or microcytic, or what, macrocytic, and so on. That gives you a fair idea because a lot of these things that we're talking about may point to a particular cause, but may not just be one cause. Like I said, in microcytic, for instance, when you have a microcytic type of anemia, we say it's iron deficiency anemia, but it's not all the time that iron deficiency, it's not only iron deficiency anemia that causes microcytic anemia. You understand? Microcytic red blood cell. There are other issues, other conditions that will create that same, For instance, we have also gotten to know that iron deficiency anemia, iron may not necessarily be the dietary iron. It may be iron that has been moved away or have been sequestered, and therefore you have iron deficiency. And the iron is present in the system. You may even have high levels of iron in your system, but you are still iron deficient as far as the blood is concerned. And that may present with microcytic anemia. So you may not necessarily be iron. So if you go and pile up iron into the body, you are going to create a situation which you can become deleterious to your body. All right. And then a lot of it are there. You have seen this. I think some of you have been conversant with the measurements in the blood. So they all measure certain aspects of the red blood cell and certain aspects of the hemoglobin or quantities of hemoglobin, which will give you an idea of whether you are anemic or not. But as to what will be the causality, you have to put a number of them together. And that is where we are here to get to. In very few cases, when the anemia is severe, they may measure a lot of this just to so that they can get the hang of what exactly is going on. But in most cases, mild and moderate cases, they just measure HB and maybe hematocrit, and then that's it. They tell you, oh, you are mildly anemic and moderate, and then bam, iron tablets or something like that, or what you call micronutrient hematinics. All right, okay. Now let's go. So we'll look at that. We don't have time, so I'll just try and see what I can talk about. Now, types of anemia, there are various types, but the major ones are the iron deficiency anemia, which I've talked about, and then the anemia of chronic inflammation or chronic disease. These are the main types because they are caused by a number of things that we have already alluded to. The iron deficiency anemia, let me reiterate, it's not just dietary. If you have iron deficiency anemia, we always ascribe it to diet, but it is never always dietary. It could be it's a meeting point between two, right? The dietary being exacerbated, or so the chronic inflammation being exacerbated by dietary, or dietary being exacerbated by chronic, or the two of them working, in tandem, that kind of thing. So we need to further investigate. We need to find out what is actually underlying it. And in most recent times, I think they have measured ferritin and some acute phase proteins as part of the measurement of iron, and to see whether there is an infection or a chronic underlying condition, and so that they can, tackle the chronic condition before the anemia is resolved. So we say now anemia is most anemia may derive from the synergy between the inflammatory process and its effects on the bioavailability of nutrients such as iron. You see, iron may be there, but the bioavailability is affected and so on and so forth if you are still swallowing the iron. Now, iron, one of the things that we have always ascribed to iron is that because it's a dietary nutrient, you have it in the diet, we also have it in the body, okay? But you see, there are two kinds of iron, and I'm sure you have been schooled in that, heme and non-heme and so on and so forth. You know all those things. The heme ion is the one that is highly bioavailable, about 40% today is absorbed, up to about, some 25%, which is the average. Or then the non-heme ion is very little, undergoes very little absorption. So you need some substances to enhance its absorption, of which the presence of heme ion itself is an enhancer. And this heme ion is found in meat and other, animal products. So when you want to improve upon iron in the diet, make it more bioavailable, you are giving the advice to have it with some of these other heme ion, heme ion, that's meat and meat products, or there are other types of nutrients that can help in the enhancement, which is vitamin C. And here also vitamin C becomes a very, very important aspect of enhancing iron absorption when your intake of iron is mainly from non-heme sources. So you need vitamin C to enhance it, so that you can build up your iron stores. And then we also have, so iron deficiency has been noted to be, it might be a final pathway, is it? A common pathway for both, prevalent infection and associated nutritional problems. So that is what I'm saying. It may be a common pathway. So iron deficiency, when you see iron deficiency, don't just jump to the conclusion that it's a dietary iron. It could be a prevalent infection, which is always around and so on and so forth. So you need to tackle all those things. So now let's look at the control. Having, looked at this background that we have, first of all, I want to reiterate that it is something that is very, very, contributed. It's very complicated, very complex, with multifactorial causation, the etiology. So if you have that in mind, you know that you cannot use one, you cannot tackle one aspect and think that you are going to resolve anemia. That is why we still have it. It's still persistent. That is not to say we can eradicate it, because the causations are many. And sometimes there's a controversial aspect of this that I will need to raise for you to be thinking about. The anemia that we see, like I said, is a marker of something underlying there. And because of the way anemia is established, or anemia appears as a result of shielding iron from microorganisms and so on, we can also say that anemia is protective. Anemia may be a protective characteristics. It is protecting us against microorganisms and so on, which may cause the inflammation in your system. So anemia can be a protective, especially when it's mild or moderate. But when it becomes severe, it means that something else is being exacerbated, or is made worse, and therefore that could worsen even the condition that is creating the anemia. So that is where then you need to be very circumspect about. But anemia, and that is a fact, it could be protective. It's protecting you against other microorganisms. So we need to be having that in the back of our mind. So in trying to tackle the issue of control and protection, we know that prevention, we look at the food-based approaches, because nutritional anemia is very common, it's very rife. We have all agreed. So look at food-based approaches that are very important in dealing with this. And the food-based approaches includes supplementation, fortification, dietary diversity, and also dietary modification. These are very important food-based approaches that we can use to curb dietary iron deficiencies, so that we can improve upon the levels of blood in our system. And then there are various ways by which these are done. The supplementation already is ongoing among women and among girls. I mean, the girl one is still being it's under pilot. Is that not it? Or they have scaled up. It's scaled up. Okay. But you see, the problem with supplementation is that you only target a certain group of people, and you cannot target. The supplementation must be like done in a, what do you call it, a life cycle approach. If you are targeting pregnant women for iron, whatever it is, what of non-pregnant women? So by the time they get to pregnancy, they already iron deficient. So in some places, they are targeting all women. Once you get into a pregnant, a reproductive age, you are targeted. And that is the approach I think we need to also take, okay? So that we can target everybody and then know that at least we reduce this. But you see, like I said, it is not always iron deficiency, not always dietary iron. So we need to do other things, not just about giving them. That is why most of the women who are taking the iron as a point have suffered some side effects, which are due to the interaction between the iron and the other aspects of is an oxidant, can oxidize, create oxidative states, which can be very, very reactive. So it's very important to have a balance. We need to be very cautious about what we are doing and do the things that will isolate those people to determine exactly what is going on. And that is the same principle why malarious areas don't give if you give, especially in children, the truth will be exacerbated. The malaria will become very severe and all that. And it's likely to even make the anemia or whatever it is even severe. So it's very, very important to have a balance. With the I've mentioned, and kidney problems, liver problems. Sometimes we don't do that. I don't know how many of us do liver function tests. It's very expensive, and so we don't do it. And sometimes a liver function test until it comes here. I mean, if you have a liver problem, you never know until the liver, the ends are very, very high. And that time you are having challenges with trying to maybe the kidney problems are on the rise. Kidney on the rise, moderate and severe. They are there. So if the anemia itself will face the kidney problem, kidneys die to be able to properly. So the blood reduces because problem created by problem, then you are that's why the same thing they tell you about heart anemia because of heart conditions. I mean, heart failure. Anemia is a cause. So if you have heart that precipitate heart failure, the anemia also will help to even further, worsen the heart failure. And if you are not careful, within a matter of a short time, you are gone too soon. It's not gone too soon. All right. So the rest, dietary diversification, very, very important. Diversify the diet so that you can improve upon the nutrient levels, can improve upon the normal requirements can be met, and so on and so on. The various nutrients. Dietary diversification for me is the way we should be going to control and also to prevent dietary diversification, and that is something we should push as nutritionists. I don't know how many of you are pushing that, but that has been my main trust. Anytime I'm talking about on the radio, I talk about dietary diversification. We don't want to. Our food is monotonous. So our diet is monotonous. It's rice. Why? And it's monotonous and it's not diversified. Okay, when you do that, and eventually you have It's plastics and the mosquitoes have started breeding. And unfortunately, what we do is that we clear the gutter, put it at the edge of the gutter. The rain comes again and washes them back inside. What have you done? Because what? Hey, come on. It's like there's a lot for us to do. Now we don't see this as nutrition, but it's part of nutrition. Because if people understand that, look, these things you are doing will come back to you in the form of malaria, in the form of anemia, which eventually will kill you. You have to act. We don't understand these concepts, so how they intertwine. It's very important. The same with helminth infestation. I don't know how many times we do it. We do it for only pregnant women and maybe children. Is that not it? But after deworming, I think it's something because of the way our foods are prepared and sold and out there. Everybody needs to deworm. Every one of us, we need, because the worms will not only take the blood in your system from the GIT, they will provide an inflammatory state. And inflammation is already a no-go area as far as anemia is concerned. So don't say, oh, okay, let them eat small. Okay, they are just taking dessert. As some people say, oh, this is small they are taking. Like the mosquitoes are fighting, so almost on for dessert. You know, things like that. But they are killing you eventually. So we are dying in our numbers, gone too soon because of all these things. Then infectious disease. As for the infectious diseases, there are plenty. I think you mentioned a lot of them already. HIV, TB, what not. I mean, so many of them because the conditions are right for them. In our place here, conditions are very right. TB, for instance, is in the air, it's in your mouth, it's in your nose, everywhere. The TB bacteria is there. If you like, go and do what do you call it? They are there. They are there. Even Helicobacter pylori, some of you know about that.
It's there in your stomach, in your GIT. Helicobacter is there, even if you don't have ulcer, it is there. But if you create the necessary conditions for it, it will also do what? It will proliferate. Use your iron, the iron that it gets from the ulcer, and grow in large numbers. And as it's growing, it's working to the detriment of your own nutrition. So all these organisms that we give them will cause problems for us, not just by their toxins, but also create the anemic environment for us, which will eventually affect our energy production, affect our energy levels, affect so many functions in our body, our brains, all the symptoms and signs I mentioned about are the causes of most of these things. And they are always together. Please, they do not occur in unison, like independently. So when you say anemia of iron deficiency, you just going to tackle the iron deficiency and it's gone. People have tackled iron deficiency and anemia has never been eradicated. So let us look at it in a holistic fashion. Controlling and prevention are basically the other two-pronged edge of the eradication of anemia. Let's look at them in that way so that we can stem the tide of anemia. I think I will give the last slide. The last slide is just to re-emphasize some of the things I've said. It says the cause of anemia is more complex than a simple dietary deficiency, as is often speculated. It's more complex than a simple dietary deficiency. Now, recognizing that the etiology of anemia is complex and multifactorial shifts the emphasis for prevention to a consideration of a wider range of potential causative factors. And if you know that there's a wider range of causative factors, it means your prevention approaches will also be multi-pronged. You have different ways of tackling the issue. If you tackle it in one prong, one condition, anemia, and you say this is a dietary, you are giving the dietary approach and you leave the other approaches, before you know, you are not doing anything as far as the anemia is concerned. And last but not the least is, it says, effective management of anemia in high prevalent context, and our context is high prevalence. Public health, serious public health issue in Ghana, and maybe I won't talk for others, I say Ghana, and in the northern region, it's even more serious. If you don't see it as such, then I'm afraid the underlying factor for the fact that we are all malnourished. If you have anemia, you are malnourished. Whether it's mild, it's moderate, or whatever, it's a nutritional issue, so you are malnourished. And some of you will not accept that you are malnourished, but you are. Because the symptoms that I mentioned earlier, you have it. Some of you are tired already, tired. You are dozing, you are tired. So, all right, so it is one of the things to recognize all these we are talking about. And then when you have the opportunity to intervene, you know exactly how to intervene. Don't let us go back to do things like she said, doing the same old things, the same old way. You'll get the same results. We need better results. So if you are given opportunity to resolve anemia, don't go back and say and prescribe iron tablets just like that because you think it's iron deficiency, which is more common in this part of the iron deficiency may not necessarily be dietary iron deficiency. So you have to be very, very cautious and know what is the underlying reason. And so it says, what is it? So implementation of and integrated package of interventions to address all the major causes. So this is the way to go. In our developing countries, we need an integrated approach. We need an integrated approach, including all the things I've mentioned, including supplementation, fortification. I mean, do we do fortification at all? Yeah. Apart from iodine, iodized home-based fortification. And the problem we are having is that for the fortification, the problem we have is that we don't have particular foods that are industrially produced. Fortification works best when you are fortifying an industrially produced food. Like you have gari produced industrially and you are fortifying it, or you have condo that you have to fortify. It's produced from particular, manufacturers. But here we have local, small production site and so on. It's not everybody who can do it. So some will fortify, some will not be, and so on and so forth. Different levels. So now I think the last time WFP was doing it in various communities. They were organizing it. We were organizing machinery and nutrients for them to fortify. So let's look at that. If you have the opportunity, make a suggestion on that so that people will have the opportunity to alleviate their anemia. I think that's the end. On that note, I say thank you very much for everything that we
that was a very, very deep and insightful session. Thank you very much, Prof, for taking us back to the very basics. Yeah, I mean, there are some of the things are like age. I said, be really. Yeah, so we are very grateful. And I mean, I think, hello, please, we are getting feedback for the online session, so let's try and minimize the noises. So it's time for discussion. If you have any question, clarification, Prof will take it, and then after that we can call it a day. We have done close to 2 hours for this session and about 3 hours for those that came in earlier. So the floor is open now. If you have any questions, inputs, and then areas for clarification. Yeah, so we'll take the first round 4, and then you'll be last. We'll take 4, and then we'll come back again. So Alice will go first. Yeah.
Very much. When Prof was going into the theology and all that, this one, that as nutrition professionals is very important. What I'm taking here is that we need to look at nutritional assessment again. Because we're talking about factors that infections and all that. How are we assessing the nutritional status? Let's move away from there and there is so much. He's talked about a lot of lab disease history. It's very key for us. Let's change the way we are practicing. In fact, there is so much time for you, the nutrition and dietetics professional. We do almost the same thing that the doctors do, even more. But this is just to help us to be more competent. So I don't know if you were paying attention. Unfortunately, there was so much noise. Please, if you didn't, then when the slides show, I would encourage us. Let's go back to it. Let's re-evaluate ourselves. How are we assessing the nutritional status? And pick them in. And move away from everything that because we are nutrition professionals, we are just thinking about it. It is not wrong for you to write a note and send back to the doctor that I think this is not really nutrition. Let's look at it again. We can do it. And it starts from here. We have been empowered. Let's make it easy. It's not just that when the points and our licenses and all that. So if you were thinking that this one was more academic, it's not. Those in the teaching hospital who testify to this, the things that we say, we are looking at it. We need to even look at the labs. Do the teaching professional. It is your duty. It is not that of the doctor. And if you need help, you seek for it. You might not be able to interpret it. You call on the lab and you give the best information of the person. How do you intervene when you don't have the person? How would we have a very appropriate intervention? So I guess we're very insightful and
Thank you.
Thank you.
know that it was very important for us and very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Your hand was up.
I was
For my own life.
in fact, this discussion was an eye-opener to all of us, and it makes us real nutritionists, distinguishing us from other professions. Because when we hear diet lists at some places, it is not for us as nutritionists. We have gone past diet place where food is cooked and shared to patients. He made it clear to us that we should extend our profession beyond just the food. He started that it's not what we eat, in fact, but what we should not eat, and what we should expect will come to our system. And as nutritionists, we should be able to identify it because it goes a long way to enter the food chain. So, aside that, I just want to find out from Prof whether Indomine is modifiable. What do you call food? Diversified, modifiable food diversified. Because what we often hear over, media and television about some of these empty things and the way it is, advertised, we as nutrition are even attempted to recommend it for some of our clients. But I just want him to elaborate on that just from 1 minute so that we get an understanding on it.
Well, thank you for the presentation. You took us back to our anatomy and physiology again. It was a nice presentation. My question is with regards to the B complex, riboflavin. You mentioned that its sources, one of the sources is in milk. And then it kind of helps also in anemia prevention and control stuff. But from another school of thought, we are told the milk is a rich source of calcium, and calcium inhibits iron absorption. So I'm kind of confused here. If you could, thank God you are the man who have always served as the hot meal. So if you could help clarify this, thank you.
All right. So let me start from Mary's own. We're talking about calcium and riboflavin, and of course, calcium inhibits. Now, calcium inhibits heme iron, not non-heme. Okay, heme iron. So if you have, oh, you can't hear. Okay. Yeah, calcium and talking about, I was talking about riboflavin and the calcium. the vitamin C.
Yeah, I've realized that if you are a food, somebody who is truly defective, you see this vitamin C that we saw, it became very prominent when COVID came. And that vitamin C with zinc. Yeah, I just experienced it. Like somebody who is G6PD full defect and started reacting. So it means, but under normal circumstances, if a person takes maybe 1 or 2 already a day, doesn't react. So it means at that particular point in time, this too much of everything came to play.
Yes.
So it means to make sense.
Exactly what
Yes.
I'm going to say.
If you are G6PD defect, then people are buying that and drinking. You have to be cautious of what you are doing because you would. I saw the person going through a lot of reactions for taking that immediately within like 30 or 1 hour.
The vitamin C tablets that we take have several overages of vitamin C that is unique in your body. They have high concentrations of vitamin C.
Yes.
You see, and what you get from one, what you call it, average orange, you get about 40 micrograms, 30 milligrams of micrograms, right? And that one inside is over about 1,000.
Yeah.
1,000. So you can imagine the quantity there is high, and of course, too much of even the good things, like I said. So you should know, I mean, the limit should be known. When they say something is good, usually it's about moderation. Moderation. And nutritionists will also learn that vocabulary, moderation. And the question they'll ask you, how much is moderation? And that's what you should be able to answer. How much is moderation? You see, there is none of us who do not know what moderation is, because we are hedonistic. We are hedonistic. We like pleasure. Our tongues like pleasure. So when you are taking something and you are feeling the pleasure in the thing, you don't know control. You don't know that it's too much. You know, it's moderate. It's moderate, but it's too much. The moment you take it up to a certain level where you see that it has an effect on you, it means you've gone beyond moderation. And what may be moderate for me may not be moderate for another person. It's an individual thing. It's difficult to say, oh, take this amount and that's moderate for you. It's an individual thing, but we need to ascertain that ourselves. That is very important. The Indomie, yes, the Indomie issue, is so interesting. When you see these people who produce this multinational or whatever, they are rich and powerful. The money alone is so powerful. And so they can do anything, they can buy, they can sell anything they want to sell. Even if the product is not good and it's killing people, they don't care. All they care about is the profit. Look, they are doing it in pharmacy, the big pharma. Yeah. They are doing it to us. Coca-Cola is doing it to us, and all the other sugar sweetened beverage producers. They don't care. All they care about is their profits. So this is where you see nutritionists, we should be up and do, you should sit up. Indomie, I personally, when I came back from UK, when I went to do my nutrition, there was a big organization fighting these multinational companies because of the way they were killing people. People were dying from all sorts of, things that shouldn't kill human beings. Now, Indomie, if you look at the Indomie, what is making, don't we eat spaghetti? We have been eating spaghetti and here they call it what? You call it talia and all. We'll be eating them. Has anybody complained? Has anyone said anything about it? Then they realized that, hey, these people, they like it. The Chinese people started with Chinese noodles. They were producing the noodles. Then they realized that people who like the noodles, because there's substance that they put in the Chinese noodles, all they need is to increase the quantity of it. And that substance is MSG. Yeah. MSG is monosodium glutamate. And I'm telling you today, we are using it in almost everything that we do. Yes. Go back, 10K. Anything, any food that is being cooked in the anything we are doing, porridge, we are putting MSG inside. Yes. And MSG, look, 20-something years ago, MSG was banned in Europe. Was banned because they started having something they call the Chinese restaurant syndrome, because the Chinese like it a lot in their soya sauce, in their whatever they put, the MSG is there. So it's there. Okay. Now, personally, I did something on MSG when I was doing my master's in Kolebu, I tried to look at hypertension and salt, sodium, and we realized that the sodium in MSG is monosodium, unlike the one in salt is bisodium. Sodium bisodium, two, and they are different. They are not the same. The one in the monosodium is able to elevate your blood pressure higher than the one So when you take equivalent of salt and monosodium, the monosodium will shoot up your BP fast, higher, and it's quick because when it goes in there, it even takes over the work of the actual sodium. The sodium that your body needs, that is pumped into your sodium, potassium pump, and all those things, is not monosodium. So when monosodium goes there, it's like it overcomes it, and it changes the metabolic process. Just like carbon monoxide will do to oxygen. The same thing, oxygen, carbon monoxide will take over oxygen and clear oxygen from the system and go and bind to the hemoglobin. The same thing sodium, monosodium is doing. So it will get you to a certain state. And when they realized, at that time, they said hot flashes. It started with hot flashes. When you take a restaurant food from in school or higher in monosodium glutamate, you get hot flashes like the menopausal women get. That's how it started. Then they realized that apart from that, it was giving you, apart from how you have palpitations, your heart is like you have heart bends and all those things. Then later on, kidneys, it's because your kidneys are trying to do what? To flush it out. And they get into the kidney, they will start beginning kidney damages. So in fact, in one article I read, it has been associated with high kidney failure. High kidney. Maybe you see Ghana, that's why this lady was talking about the fact that we need to generate our own local research. We don't do such research. We only talk. Me, I'm talking right now. I don't have any research to back whatever I'm telling you. So I tell all the time when I'm talking about they need local evidence. But people have done it in other places where they have been teaching it over the years. They have seen that there's an association between the complaints about level everything to a problem. Now in Ghana, kidney disease is on the ascendant. Young people, middle-aged people, and so on. Those days we thought older people were going to those things. Hypertension, kidney, if you are old, symptoms, they old, and they get that. But now, yes, even children. I'm very young today, they're very serious problem. I don't know where it's coming from. It's coming from all this. In my house, my boy is here. I found the intake of people in my house. Nobody takes Indomie in the house. People go outside and go and eat your thing. That's your husband, but not in the house. Because I know what it does. And now, even very circumstances, there's one last thing I will get. Indomie, monosodium glutamate is used to castrate animal. So the men that cannot perform, the men that cannot go long,
My question is, in our communities, there is this perception that if you just tell a pregnant woman she's having anemia, what comes into mind is malted milk. So I want more knowledge about that malted milk issue. Thank you.
I have a concern. It's also about we being nutritionists, what we can do nationwide. If we can draft policies that will help the beverages and other companies so that they will do fortification of some of these vitamins that will help boost our system so that the anemia that we are talking about can be corrected. I think if there should be a policy that will help restrict some of them, it will help a lot. That is my lead here.
empty calories. If you are taking Coke and all those other things, it's empty calories. If you are taking banku, you are taking just rice. This rice we are having here, rice, and there's very little stew and all that. It's empty calories because the rice, they have removed all the nutrients. They have polished it. Even the big amount or the big products you take, flour made from white flour, it's empty calories. Because the white flour is, they have removed the aileron, all the layers that contain the nutrients. So if you are taking a high amount of those things, you are providing, and empty calories will deplete you of micronutrients. Because you need the B vitamins are the micronutrients that are contained within these foods. Now, if they are being removed, what means that the little that you have in other parts of the body or within the food that you take will be depleted, will be used, and then the rest of the carbohydrates that you have will have no micronutrients to break them down, and they will be converted to fat. That is why people are taking a lot of carbohydrates and they are growing fat. You are growing fat. For hitherto, we thought it was the Europeans and people were eating a lot of meat and a lot of good food and so-called good food were the ones who were growing fat. Now you can go to a area where they are eating TZ, and people are growing fat. So you ask, why are they getting the fat? It's because they are eating a lot of these things which have been, already depleted of their, and they are growing fat. They are growing fatter, and that is not good. It leads you to all. No, the next time we're going to look at non-communicable disease, and some of it will shock you. Some of us are sitting here with 3 or 4 non-communicable diseases in our system. We are going around with it. So when you fall down, you die. You say, I don't listen. We say witchcraft. But it's we who are causing it. So knowledge, please. Let knowledge be a powerful tool for you. Otherwise, you will not know what knocked you. You'll be down and you don't know what knocked you.
Okay.
So let me just say something small and I just want to, on behalf of the GAND executive, and thank everybody for coming, and also as much as possible try and then get the patient a link you can get to fill the form. So sometimes I know big issues, they are doing all sorts of things, and we can't say anything because the only thing that we can get like they are able to get it. Then we are able to take us bargaining power on. But if we don't do it and we are there, so I don't belong to it. I don't know. I also belong to most of the other and I'm such a member of GAND because very soon, one day, if they are not a member of GAND, it will be very difficult for you to happen. I think that's the truth. So don't let us run away from it. As much as possible, I encourage. I think I don't know if the link to
GAND online, I'll put it on the page.
Some of them may not be on the page.
So that we can.
So okay, so we just project it and then
so that we can join it and then do the new planning for now. Thank you very much.
So what is GAND?
so all right, so GAND is Ghana Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. Yeah.
I'm sorry. But that is what
Right.
Join the academy. Join the academy. And very soon, glad you did.
Because we even started with the CPD last year, and a lot of learning was taking place. And for me, I think most of the CPD this year are normally done on Mondays between 4 and 6.
Yeah.
But we have the zonal one now.
Yes. Now,
we're following it through, and I've learned a lot. And it will improve your just like today. I was very happy when somebody was mentioning that and she's on about how do you do our nutrition assessment? So anemia, what are the things? Is it just taking the antibiotic and we are okay? Even if the lab technician doesn't even bring results, how do we even know that this person is anemic? Or you use the physical one, you look at the eyes, you look at pain, and you not tell the.
And now you know that the person is eating clay.
Exactly.
Like,
so, but when they are able to have it, they are able to go through the assessment
then you ask all the questions, and you are able to at least know. So if you go and the person has no lab report, you ask the nutritionist that does the lab or the doctor, you can do it. You write a note to the doctor that please, I think, yeah, I'm effective for everyone. And I want to look when you do that, they make people, they will see you to know what you are about. You know your job. The kind of respect people will give to you. You'll be surprised that you went this and you allowed yourself. But because we didn't have the knowledge. But once we all begin to learn, so I'll encourage you as much as when you see them, then try to join. And listen to me, you may pick one or two things from it.
Yeah,
and it's very helpful.
and then the thing is this, in the medical, or should I say the health professional arena, you are health professionals. The health professional arena, there's a fight for supremacy. The doctors think they are more superior. Now the medical laboratory people are now showing their realities. They are doing doctor of medical, this optometry, doctor of this, pharmacy, doctor of that. They are showing. I'm sure very soon we'll also be doing doctor of this. We are getting there in the pipeline. So that we will tell them that we are all equal, we are on the same footing. And don't allow yourself, you see, like we say, you see, when you look down upon yourself, that's what happened. Don't look down upon, don't go and be too known. I know this, but no, but just know that you know something.
So what I know currently, what is happening is when they carry the lab results, what we normally do is look at hemoglobin is there.
That's the only thing that is
hemoglobin without the other ingredients.
I kind of, so what you are saying is right. But most of the intervention that is placed in Ghana health kind of restricts us. It does not allow us to exploit. Because when you call most of the interventions, when they call, what they talk about in terms of anemia, HB and its points. So you are restricted. So you don't allow yourself like to learn. That is why this anemia was the way like anemia. We read anemia. But it made us to appreciate anemia again.
So that
and what we should look for. But our intervention
we have two ends that solve. We have the public health aspect and the clinical aspect. What dominates us, because what health traditionally focus on the vast magnitude of many forms of undernutrition, which is at the public health side. But we are also confronted with other forms of nutrition characterized by what Prof just said. So that makes us sort of limited to the HPs and other things, which is their public health. But if those of us, especially at the clinical, side, and extend,
let me tell you something. Don't bring yourself down to one aspect. Nutrition, right, can be public health, can be clinical. You have just seen it. All the issue that vegetarian and the way why I'm saying this, what I know what you're talking about. When you look at it from above, over the years, we have to fight. I personally, since I started working in the area of nutrition, I'm parallel with the people who used to head the nutrition unit. It used to be, I don't know where it was, it's still a unit. It's not a department, isn't it? Or yes, I remember we've been going for a meeting and I've been quarreling with them. I said, you are sitting here and nutrition, which supposed to be the boss or the top at the top, you are just a unit. I went there one day, we quarreled. That time Mrs. Agbili was there. He quarreled with me because of that. What I come to